ladies, and welcome to Arise Chats. It is so good to be back with you. We started our first one last week, and we're on to our second one in our series 3 of Arise Chats. It's just for those of you that are new and are joining us online for the first time, welcome. It is so good to have you. It's just a space online where we can get together and be encouraged in God's word and encourage each other, which is so awesome. It is so good to have you with us. For those of you that are joining us for the first time and you weren't with us last week, I have the amazing friend and guest that I am going to be interviewing today as well, who's joining us today, Mads Dazel. It is so good to have you with us. Thank you so much again for taking time to be with us. Last week was just so encouraging last week. If you girls haven't managed to watch it, it'll be on on Facebook. You can look at the videos and just to catch up, because there were some pearls of wisdom and nuggets of gold there. Are really so good. And let me just give a little bit of context again for those of you that are joining us for the first time. Mads is a mom and of 3 boys, an incredible wife, and has been in ministry for many years, but in the terms of a pastoral counselor and training up thousands of counselors, lay counselors across different churches. And she is a passionate lover of Jesus. She's passionate about seeing wholeness and healing come into ladies' lives, and them walking into freedom of their original design and identity of what God's planned for them and purpose for them, but finding inner healing, finding wholeness and breaking free. So Mads, last week we were chatting a lot about finding wholeness and healing emotionally, and we opened up a lot on caring for self. Like you spoke about the 4 different levels of care: self-care, community care, pastoral care, and professional care, which I thought was so helpful. And we chatted a lot around self-care, and you opened that up for us. But today I would love you to open up a little bit more about caring, how we can care for others once we've found freedom and healing, and what true discipleship actually looks like and with people in our church and in our communities. And yeah, and I think part of our mission and mandate is to make disciples, right? That's part of the mission, is make disciples. And not all of us have counseling training. Not all of us, have those sort of skill sets. But maybe you can give us some tips, Mads, some practical tips on how to help others. Yeah.
Awesome question, love it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because this morning when I was actually doing some reading in scripture, I came across 2 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians 1 verses 3 to 7. I'm not going to read it. It actually mentions the word comfort 9 times in 7 verses, about how, when we receive God's comfort, we can take what he gives us to give to others. And, he repeats this whole idea again and again and again, that actually part of what it means to be a Christ follower is to take what he's given us and to pass it on to others. Now,
I love it.
One of my holy discontents about being a counselor is that we live in a world where people are paying strangers to listen to them, because they don't have safe spaces. And, research has shown that from first symptom to treatment, most people wait 11 years before asking for help. And, we're living in a world now where our masks have come off. Thank you, Jesus. But yet so many are still living behind a mask.
Absolutely.
And I always use the acronym FINE. Everyone says they're feeling fine, and FINE stands for feeling insecure, neurotic, and emotional. But we're still walking around with these masks. And imagine again the impact it would have on the demand for counseling, because the demand for counseling is going through the roof. But
Absolutely.
not everybody needs to see a professional.
Yeah.
And that's what most people don't realize, that every depression or anxiety started with an unprocessed emotion. And imagine if we can create a culture of mask-off conversations. How do we be ears to a world that is looking for someone to listen to them?
Wow.
One of my most favorite quotes is by an author, David Augsburger. He wrote the book Caring Enough to Hear and Be Heard. And he says this: being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, it's almost indistinguishable.
Wow.
And for me, that's the heart of of kind of
Sure.
community care. Imagine if we can train people up to be ears.
Yes.
And like you said, not everybody's got to be a counselor. Well, not everybody's meant to be a counselor, but everybody's got ears for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we just create safe spaces for listening, the power of that would automatically decrease the need for counseling, because I'm processing my emotions somewhere.
I love that. That is so, so powerful. Why don't you just read that quote again from about, what was it?
Yeah, so it's by David Augsburger, and his book is Caring Enough to Hear and Be Heard. And the quote is this: being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, it's almost indistinguishable.
Oh, I think that's so profound, you know, and that I think that's hugely liberating, because we aren't all meant to be counselors, right? But we do have ears, and we can learn the skill of listening, and how powerful just that thing of being heard is almost indistinguishable to being loved. It's such a powerful thing. And I know you also speak in your book. Mads has written a book, Care for Wholeness, and it is really, really incredible. If I've read it, it's really amazing. And I know Mads is also going to be joining us, ladies, for our Arise Ladies Night, which is happening on the 11th of August, 7 to 8:30 at our new Century City building. So that's why we've got we've had 2 weeks with Mads, which is really incredible here on Arise Chats. But and I know Mads will be bringing some books, so it will be incredible for us to buy some of those books. But now I'm trying to go back to what my train of thought was. Hold on a second. I think you speak a lot about coffee cup conversations. I love that. And that we are actually all empowered. We can be there for people, and we can put that into our culture, in our churches and in our communities, of actually being able to listen and to start the process of healing before it gets so bad. Like, I love what you said about every bit of like anxiety or depression or that sort of mental health disorder stems from, it didn't start there, it started from an unprocessed emotion, which I think is profound, actually. So to be able to have those coffee cup convos, and you mentioned it in your book, is really, really, really powerful. Mads, I wanted to ask you, when should someone seek help that goes perhaps, because obviously, like you say, we're not all going to need professional help, but sometimes we are going to need a specialist. When would you say, should someone seek help that goes beyond their friend's listening ear? A pastoral counselor, someone at church who can counsel, or a professional a help. When would you say, when it goes
beyond someone just listening? Yeah.
So I think some of the big red flags around mental health is when my capacity to be effective in my world is drastically diminishing in the space of crises. Everybody can go through a crisis, but we're still able often to carry on with our workload and being a mom or being a spouse.
Life,
when my capacity to do even the things that I love to do. So you'll hear red flags like, I just can't get out of bed in the morning, or even when I'm doing something I'm passionate about doing, it doesn't bring me joy, or I don't even have energy for it. Those are the kind of big red flags that a person is slipping into depression. So that's the basic rule of thumb to listen out to, is when normal becomes difficult.
Yes,
and not just once or twice, because we all have those days like, I just don't want to get out of bed. Yeah. But when it's consistent over a period of 2-3 weeks, where it just feels like I'm stuck and I cannot get out of a pit, those are massive red flags. And I wanted to just quickly, if you don't mind, go back to the coffee cup convo space, because a small percentage of our population finds themselves in those mental health triggers. But if we don't process those early emotions, we will get there. And it can happen for years. Now, one of the things that I love about a coffee cup convo space is most people meet over a cup of coffee with somebody at least 2-3 times a week. And often it's because, we might be struggling, or we want to bounce an idea, or we need to just offload stuff with.
Just offload, yeah.
Just offload. But most people who are on the listening end of that don't know what to do with the story. Because we think that if I solve the story, I solve their emotional problems.
You want to, yes, yeah.
Which is why we often want to avoid it, because we don't have the power to solve a story.
We don't know. We don't have answers.
We don't have answers to the story. And so I want to just give a little teach into this moment, because it's not about solving the story. It's about making a person feel heard. So I always say emotions are like diving into a swimming pool. Your goggles get filled with water. You can't see clearly when you're emotional. You can't think clearly when you're emotional. If we can just create safe spaces for people to express their emotion, and there's 3 steps to validation listening, is number 1, just asking, how are you really feeling? Talk to me about what's going on in your emotions. Help a person get their emotions out. If they cry, it's okay, it's fine. The second thing is to just name the emotion you hear them saying. I can see you're overwhelmed. I can see you're stressed. I can see you're feeling
angry. Yeah.
Just name it. When you name it, you tame it.
Yes.
And then validate it. It makes sense to me that you're feeling this, given that. That's validation listening. If we just did validation listening for people, number 1, they experience their value in the eyes of somebody else.
Yeah.
So powerful. And number 2,
hugely powerful.
They've expressed their emotion, which means their thinking brain comes back online.
Oh, wow.
Which often helps them consider the solution to their stories.
Oh, wow, Mads. Isn't this good? This is so amazing. This is so helpful.
If everybody just did that, you would get me out of the job. That's my goal.
Okay, so just mention those practical points again, Mads.
Okay.
Just mention, so
validation listening is number 1, get somebody to express their emotion. Tell me what you're really feeling in your story. Talk to me about your emotions.
Yes.
Okay. Then name it. I can see you are. It sounds like you're angry or frustrated. There's something powerful about hearing your emotions coming off of somebody else's lips. Like, yes, that's exactly what I'm feeling. Yeah, it's just like, wow, somebody sees
you actually
hears
see
me.
Yes, and you love me enough to actually understand. Yeah.
And then the first step is validate. It makes sense to me that you're angry, given that. And then you just repeat back what, it makes sense that you're angry because your spouse is being unsupportive right now, or whatever it is, that's what I call validation listening, when you can validate the emotion based on the story you've heard.
Wow. Incredibly powerful.
What happens then is that the emotional brain, also known as the reptilian brain, when the emotional brain is triggered, the thinking brain goes offline.
That's it. Exactly that. It's incredible how the brain works. Yeah.
I know. It's why rugby guys get given red cards when they start throwing punches in the field. Because their thinking brain's turned off and their reptilian brain is turned on.
Yeah.
When you release emotion, the reptilian brain turns off and the thinking brain comes back on.
Yeah.
Even with parenting, it works so beautifully. When you just name your child's emotion, oh, my boy or my girl, I can see you are feeling. And that makes...
Absolutely. I've been trying to apply that with my boys, actually, since reading about that. And it is so helpful. So helpful. Yeah.
And their creative thinking comes back on. And so, again, we don't have to solve people's stories. Everybody's got a storm that they're struggling with. And we often feel powerless in the face of a storm. But the most powerful thing we can do for people is just reflect their emotions and make them.
Yeah, that's so helpful,
That's so helpful, Mads.
Yes.
That will change culture.
Absolutely. And that's what we want to do. We want to change culture, don't we? And I think that's just so practical, girls. That's so practical, those three things, because I mean, I can also remember having chats with certain friends that are going through things, or people in the church, and often I'll be like, well, I feel like I really haven't helped you at all, but I've just been listening, and then afterwards they say, wow, I feel so much better just being able to talk, just being able to let go of my emotions, be angry, be sad, you know, all of that, and just like I can actually think clearly now. Like they'll say, I can actually think clearly, I feel so much better, and I think it's almost like, yeah, it is incredibly, incredibly powerful. So I think those steps are hugely helpful and hugely practical. So yeah, thank you, Mads. I know it's helpful for me even as a mom and with my boys, so thank you. Yeah, and I think and talking about cultures and bringing in and breaking certain cultures, Mads, what are some of the cultures that we need to break? You know, the cultures of today, the cultures of and how we think and how we do things, in order to find wholeness, in order to find healing in our own lives and other people's lives. Yeah.
I think the shame stigmas around mental health that, you know, especially as Christ followers, we think if I'm a Christ follower, that means I must have it all sorted. And it's funny, I think there's more shame around mental health in the church than out the church.
So true.
And so there's fears about being judged, fears about being rejected. Yeah. So we need to really change the culture around it's okay not to be okay. And I think another way that we can change culture, and I think one of the things that people find themselves doing more and more and more because of fear is we want to scapegoat others. You know, when we're feeling powerless in our own lives, we often choose behavior that makes us feel powerful, but very often that behavior is destructive. And so going back to emotions, to give a simple example, I always say that emotion is similar to vomit, okay? It's better out than staying in. Yeah. But the problem with scapegoating is that we end up vomiting on people versus in a bucket. They're two very different experiences. And so, you know, and you see this so much on social media, in road rage, you know, tele-sales conversations, you know, when somebody's not doing what they need to do over the checkouts, and people are so angry and frustrated with all of this kind of vomit emotion that the first negative thing that comes across their path, they just spew it out. And it's creating greater division, it's creating greater disunity, mistrust, because we're not managing emotion in a healthy way. We're penting it up, we're suppressing it until it literally can't, you know, we've got no control over it.
Yeah.
And that's also,
and then it's ugly.
And then it's very ugly. And you know, from being a culture changer is also just being able to put in healthy boundaries for yourself, going, I can see that you're angry, but speaking to me like this, I will not accept. So owning boundaries around yourself, and then encouraging, like I was talking about just now, that masks off conversation, going, I'll be a safe space for you, but I will not be vomited on.
Yes.
And so
helpful.
Owning that space, I think, is really important. Because you just got to be on social media for 5 minutes and you'll see vomit.
Absolutely.
Dishonoring.
Absolutely. Yes.
Even in family systems, people get vomited on at work. They don't know what to do with it. Then they come home and they vomit on their spouse vomits on the kids vomit on their
Yes. Yeah. It's just like this terrible cycle. Yeah. But
I think, but even speaking about breaking cultures and breaking that mindset of the stigma of getting help, professional help. I think, like you say, in the church, the mental health sort of can be a bit of a stigma. Mental health challenges and seeking professional help and counsel around those areas. I mean, we've got to break that whole stigma around mental health challenges in the church. Yeah.
And what you did, Candice, is that you took a holistic approach. You know, this talks about how we're spirit, soul, and body.
And body,
now, you know, we have a brain, and our brain is an organ, and our mind is an invisible process.
That's it.
And if my thinking is sick, it can make my brain sick. But if my brain is sick, it can also make my thinking sick. Bit of a chicken or the egg.
That's helpful. Yeah.
And, you know, finding the right people to help us consider, is this a brain issue or is this a thinking issue? Because that word soul, may your whole spirit, soul, and body, that word soul, the root of that word soul is the word psyche, which is where the word psychology comes from.
Wow.
And actually, I think we should be calling them soulologists, not psychologists. But we have to take a holistic approach, you know, because
yes, absolutely.
I've known of people who have died because they stopped taking medication because they were told it meant that they didn't have faith. Well, no one would say that to somebody when it comes to cancer treatment or diabetic treatment. But when it comes to mental health, we go, oh, it's a lack of, no, it's not a lack of faith. It's an
But it is a holistic approach. You're right, absolutely. And that's why we need our relationship with God and our identity is number one, is foundational. And then it's community care, like we spoke about, and having people around us, strong Christian friends around us, spiritual moms, spiritual dads, that hold us accountable, that we can talk to, having those safe environments where we can have those coffee cup conversations with mentors or friends, and then having like pastoral counselors in the church. And for those of you that don't know, we've got a whole care forum that we have here of incredibly beautiful, amazing pastoral counselors. I think Mariette is one of them. She is unbelievable. The fruit from her ministry is just incredible. And if you are struggling right now, and you can go onto our website, you can fill in a care form, and we will direct you to the best possible counselor for you. But we've got everything from financial care to marriage care to inner healing. And I know, Mads, your book is incredible. I know you've got a lot of resources as well available. Maybe you can share a little bit about that, your Edify or your websites. Maybe you can share a few details about that, Mads, for some of the girls.
One of the things that I do when I listen to people's stories is I hear repetitive cycles and roots. And counseling is a reactive approach to a problem. So I've written a lot of courses that's more of a proactive approach that empowers people, that helps them better understand. Because also people can't afford ongoing counseling. So I'm like, how do I get them the counselor to go home? So I've got about 12 different online video courses. A couple of them are free. There's some free parenting stuff there on how to teach your kids.
I've been listening to some of those.
Those are awesome. I've got stuff on marriage, on healing the wounded inner child, identity foundations, the popular wholeness course, and courses for training if you want to do training to invest in your own schools. So these are incredible self-care and community care resources. They're short snippet videos, so they're kind of almost like a little devotion that you can use. They're not these labor-intensive hour-long videos. They're short little videos.
Mads.
Lots of downloadable notes and specifically reflective questions. I've tried to consider, if the person was sitting in front of me as a counselor, what kind of questions would I ask them? And I've written those questions down because those questions help grow self-awareness, and self-awareness is crucial for change. You can't change what you don't know. And so, that you can find out more of my courses through my website, edify-buildingthesoul.com. It'll take you to the links where my courses are hosted online, and you can either do a pay-as-you-go version where you pay for it online, or you can email me and ask for an invoice, and I'll invoice you and help you.
Brilliant. Wow, Mads, it has been an absolute pleasure having you online with us. Everything you've shared has been incredibly helpful, not only for myself, but I'm sure to so many ladies that are watching now. Girls, if you know of anyone who is battling or anyone who might just be encouraged by all of this, why don't you just forward the feed, share the video, really share the interview. I think this is incredibly helpful and so practical. That's what I love about you, Mads. Everything's just so practical. And I've done some of the free parenting courses, but I'm excited to actually do a few more of your courses. I really, really am. And girls, I really hope that that's been helpful. It is so wonderful to have you online with us. We have come to the end of our second week of our third series of Arise Chats. And for those of you that don't know, again, I'm going to mention it, Mads is with us tomorrow night for our Rise evening, 7 to 8:30, and we're going to be meeting at our new Century City building, which is going to be so cool. It'll be a great way for you to come and see the new building, and it's going to be an incredible night. Be expectant. God is going to move powerfully. I really believe that. Mads, again, thank you for joining us. Until next week, girls, we will see you there. Bye.